It was another crazy week in fantasy football world, but guess what? Jason and we got you covered. The Fantasy G.O.A.T starts right now.
This is the Fantasy G.O.A.T, sponsored by Casablanca Resort and Casino, like Vegas used to be.
Welcome to the Fantasy G.O.A.T. I'm Mike Davis. That's Jason Feinberg. Jason, another crazy week. Let's kick off livestock right now. I think the big thing I want to start with is Deshaun Watson. He's now out for the year. Is this the worst trade and signing of all time, what Cleveland has done?
I mean, it's starting to look like it, and they were looking good finally with him. Finally, he was getting the chemistry with Amari Cooper. The running game was, starting to look okay without Nick Chubb.
Right.
And then this happens. It's been up and down, and now it's just out. Now he's over.
It's ridiculous. I mean, the trade for him was 3 first-rounders, a third, and 2 fourths, and a 6, okay? Then
Wow.
They signed the 5-year guaranteed, the largest guaranteed money in league history, $230 million. This guy has had 12 starts out of a potential 34. Now he's out for the year. I mean, he's getting paid to do nothing, Jason.
And I'd like to use a little old world vocabulary, if I may.
Yeah.
When it comes to Deshaun Watson. On top of that, he has ill repute. Meaning an old world he has a bad reputation.
Oh, of course. And
That's a man of ill repute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a nice thing to say about somebody. He had the alleged sexual assault. He missed 11 games for the suspension with that. So it's not great. And even when he's on the field, he hasn't even scored more than 22 points in a single game this year. So it's a shame. And I was out on him from the beginning of the year, but fantasy managers who drafted him, you can't be feeling good. Now let's move on to this, though, within livestock. Dallas has just been exploding offensively. Dak has looked phenomenal. They had an incredible game against New York. They scored 49 points, Jason. Let's loop in right now producer James Edward Barrickman IV. James, what do you want to say about this explosive offense? The whole season we were talking about Dallas's defense, and now it seems like we're talking about their offense.
Well, yeah, this is exactly what Dallas has done all season long. They blew out an inferior team and looked dominant doing so. They scored 49 points. Dak had 26 completions, 404 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So what that means is there was a lot of room for guys who aren't normally fantasy relevant in that offense to take advantage. And nobody did that more so than my guy Brandon Cooks. He had 9 catches on 10 targets, 173 yards, and a touchdown, a welcome sight for guys like me who were really high on him coming into the season. But he's done virtually nothing.
Yeah.
So he's got a favorable matchup this week versus Carolina, but then a stretch of rough defenses. So with that being said, I'm not buying this Brandon Cooks game. It's kind of smoke and mirrors. I'm not, just because of this last game where he went off, this doesn't suddenly make him a fantasy relevant option, and I'm going to not treat him as such.
Yeah, it was certainly an outlier this week for him. The only person who doesn't seem to be doing anything is Tony Pollard, and we're going to be talking about him a little later.
And unfortunately for me, in high-stakes league, Michael Gallup.
Oh, right.
How do you score that many points and Michael Gallup gets nothing? He did have a touchdown. I forgot if it was this game or last game, but that's it.
Yeah, CD is becoming a legit wide receiver 1, where in the past few years it was a lot of Gallup thrown in the mix. Now CD is getting a ton of volume, and we expect it to continue this week against Carolina. But as we're talking about Dallas, so their cornerback Trevon Diggs, his brother Stefon Diggs plays in Buffalo. Trayvon's out for the year right now, but he actually took to social media because if you remember on Monday Night Football, Stefon Diggs didn't have the greatest game. He's been having a great year, but he didn't have a great game. It was his first game this season under 10 fantasy points. But Trevon Diggs in Dallas said that his brother needs to get out of Buffalo. Do you agree about this? And he actually threw some shade at Josh Allen, saying Josh Allen was nothing, basically. He wasn't an MVP type of player until Stefon Diggs came to Buffalo. What do you think about that?
I think anybody that can't catch a pass that comes zinging at you, this is more of a Josh Allen than a Stefon Diggs, they're the ones that need to get out of there. I mean, these guys can't. I mean, they have one job, and they know that Josh Allen.
The Gabe Davis missed. They miss a lot.
A lot of misses.
Dawson Knox.
Why? So maybe that, to your point, that is why he needs to get out, because for some reason they've had this bad chemistry last season.
Yeah.
It's obviously carrying over. He should have been targeting him more.
Do you think he throws the most catchable ball? Because there is something. I don't think he throws a great catchable ball. Because it's kind of like you see certain QBs throw the pass, like Purdy's good at this kind of stuff.
Right.
They throw it in an accurate manner that it leads to yards after the catch.
Right.
He's, Josh Allen's an interesting guy, but I think Trevon needs to chill. I mean, Stefan's having a tremendous season.
And now with Leighton Vander Esch out, he needs to worry about his defense more than about his brother.
Of course,
yeah.
But let's continue on this Dallas train right now, because our Holding One player of the week is, of course, Dak Prescott. He had the biggest week in fantasy football this past week, scoring 37.86 fantasy points. It was his first game over 400 yards this season. He had 4 TDs and 1 interception. He's QB6 right now through 10 weeks. And, of course, I think the high-level play is going to just continue on for him, especially this week against a 1-8 Carolina. So a lot of good stuff there. Jason, coming up after a short break, we're going into GOAT Vision. We got QBs, we got RBs. Stick around.
Before we head to break, in Week 11 of 2002, which Philly running back had 135 yards rushing, 82 yards receiving, and scored a touchdown? He tallied with 29.2 fantasy points and finished as the week's RB1. The answer after the break. Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you, in Week 11 of 2002, which Philly running back had 135 yards rushing, 82 yards receiving, and scored a touchdown? The answer, running back Deuce Staley, who played for Philly from 1997 to 2003.
All right, welcome back. So, Jason, GOAT Vision time now. Let's start with QBs. I'll kick us off. So, Sam Howell. Sometimes it's ugly, but, this guy is a worthwhile start for fantasy owners. Right now, who are the top 5 fantasy QBs, Jason? I'm going to list them for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, then Sam Howell. This guy is above Patrick Mahomes right now when it comes to fantasy quarterback play. And, it's ugly, but he's getting it done, and he's filling up that stat sheet. So I like Sam Howell.
It's
right
really
now.
This is where there's a huge divide between the real football league and fantasy football.
Exactly.
I remember the biggest example of what you just said, because Sam Howell gets sacked a lot. He doesn't complete all of his passes by any stretch.
Yeah.
And he's still in the league. Jameis Winston. When I had Jameis Winston a few years ago, I couldn't watch.
It's a good point.
Right, I could not watch, but at the end of the day, he always had like 30 fantasy points.
It's weird.
Or Brett Favre, if you want to go way back.
Yeah, and Josh Allen's a lot like that too.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating thing. And my guy I'm down on this week, though, is Justin Fields. He's coming back from that thumb injury. It was a short week for Thursday Night Football, so he didn't go up against Carolina. But this is not the week to put him back in your starting lineup as he's facing a tough Detroit team in Detroit, so I'm out on him. What about you?
Yeah, maybe give it a week for him. Well, look, I love the fact that my fill in any video game, football game you want, but Kyler Murray from Arizona is back, and it's just like watching myself play football on a video game.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to watch him, and he's not where he should be yet.
But he looked good.
Yeah, he looked
more
pretty good.
Athletic than I thought.
Remember, I told you last week I was going to play him.
Yeah.
And, he didn't hurt me. That's for sure. So that's good. And then who I'm really down on, he might be in this on the bottom every single week of the rest of this Fantasy GOAT, is Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Dude.
That was the worst display of all time. What did it, 2 or 4 points?
Throw the ball. Throw the ball. Because look what happened when Russ Wilson threw the ball when he was being blitzed. Guess what? They got a PI, and they won the game. This guy, I don't know if he's worried about his stats or he doesn't want to throw an interception, but come on. You're not going to win if you don't throw it, at least.
And
give it a chance.
And he's got a great, core
receiving
of people
core
to throw it to, from Ingram to Kirk to Ridley.
Just go one-on-one. Have one of those guys on one. Not everybody's being covered in zone.
Yeah.
One-on-one. give it your best shot. Let guys like Calvin Ridley get the ball.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to running back. So here's who I'm feeling and not feeling so much. So when it comes to who I'm feeling, Keaton Mitchell, I mean, this guy's just explosive.
Amazing.
You know, they're a great team. It's one of these things in fantasy football. You want to be a part of teams that are trending up. Baltimore looks phenomenal. And, you know, he didn't have the week he had 2 weeks ago where he had 9 carries on 138 yards in a TD, but he still found a way in the end zone. He had more work and usage than Gus or Justice Hill.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just think he's so talented. He's so fast. I'm banking on him to find ways to get into the end zone week in, week out.
Well, I think I told you, I took him in almost every one of my leagues. I was surprised. I had to bid up for him, kind of like you did with Achane, which was good when he's healthy and he's coming back. But no, and I didn't play him in any of the leagues, and you know, it kind of bit me. Right. But I think he and Achane are your two really exciting rookie guys.
Definitely, and streamers as we're heading into the playoffs. And I gotta bite into somebody right now who I hate to say it, but Tony Pollard. I mean, let's just break this down. It's time for the intervention, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to Tony Pollard. People were saying, what was the narrative? The narrative was, once Zeke leaves Dallas, Tony Pollard, XYZ, is going to become the workhorse back who is just potentially a top running back in fantasy football. That was some of the talk leading into drafts. And it's just not gone that way. Jason, Tony Pollard hasn't gotten into the end zone since week 1.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's nothing else to say about that.
His get-right game was supposed to be against New York because that's who he scored about early in the season, and he didn't even get in there.
I mean, he leads the league in, listen to this, 151 consecutive touches without a TD. Yeah. I mean, he's leading the league in that. I don't know what to say. He gets stopped at the goal line. He's not good at the goal line. He's not displaying any of the tendencies we thought he was, and I'm thankful I only have him in one league.
Yeah, no. Okay, so for me, you know what? Bless his heart, James Cook. I mean, from Buffalo. This guy, he fumbles, gets benched, comes back in with 7 minutes to go in the second quarter, and balls out. Then this wasn't really his fault, but he had the bad connection with Josh Allen. Right. That was a fumble. But the best one was when he must have ran like 50 yards. The ball falls out of his hands and luckily bounces right back to him, and he goes for another 20.
And that saved you big time.
That saved me big time. He won a game for me by 1 point because of that. So I love James Cook and his effort. All right, this might make Fantasy GOAT or any fantasy football show history by me putting this guy in my guys I'm down on. Yeah. You ready for this? Christian McCaffrey.
Well, how can
let me explain. Okay. Let me explain. He didn't get the record. They tried. They were trying to get him the record. They even had him go for it on 4th down in San Francisco. He still didn't get it. But let me just tell you, I'm just the messenger, okay, right here. They asked him, how did you feel about not breaking the record? And he said, I suck. He said, everybody else on my team scored but me. So that is why he is in the down part of the...
He's a humble, likable dude.
It was really cool. He'll never be down there again.
No, you got to love Christian McCaffrey. All right, kids. So coming up after a short break, we got to get into wide receivers, tight ends. We got more action for you right after a short break.
Before we take another timeout, in Week 11 of 2006, which Buffalo wide receiver hauled in 11 receptions for 265 yards and 2 touchdowns? He scored 44 fantasy points and finished as the week's wide receiver 1. The answer after the break. Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you in Week 11 of 2006, which Buffalo wide receiver hauled in 11 receptions for 265 yards and 2 touchdowns? The answer, wide receiver Lee Evans, who played for Buffalo from 2004 to 2010.
All right, welcome back, kids, to the Fantasy GOAT. All right, Jason, kick us off with wide receivers.
All right, this guy is so darn consistent and good. I got to put him up there. I am so happy with Amon St. Brown, the sun god from Detroit. I'm looking at his stats, his game log. He missed that one game in Week 5, but of his 8 games, 6 of them were over 100 yards. 2 of the other ones that were not over 100 yards, he got a touchdown. And always consistently gets at least, looks like 5 receptions was his worst day. 13 was his high.
Wow.
So it's just you plug him in and you don't lose sleep.
Yeah, he's got a high floor, which is great. Tell us who you're not feeling so much.
Both of these guys, I mean, it's like you pick one, George Pickens or Calvin Ridley, Pittsburgh and Jacksonville. I guess I'll go with George Pickens because he's disappointed me maybe one time more than Calvin Ridley, and that's not saying much. It's like 0 and 1.
Yeah.
So he doesn't seem to get separation, and he's never going to get the ball anyway if Trevor doesn't throw it to him.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah.
All right, here I am with wide receivers. So Noah Brown, you know, in Houston, back-to-back games over 150 yards. Nico Collins out, but I love that intensity he has with Yak. We saw how he fought for that extra yardage to set up that game-winning field goal. So Noah Brown and Stroud, they have a rapport,
I
love it.
What do you think if Nico Collins is playing? Would you still
I think
start
he's
him?
going to throw. I think they're going to throw a lot more. You know, I think they're going to unleash Stroud as they're heading into, fighting for playoff berths.
Yeah, because
so,
their running game isn't
it's
great.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of like
did pretty good, but yeah.
Yeah, and let me just say this: who I'm not feeling. Do you remember this line, Jason? Who said this? Elementary, my dear Watson. Who said that?
The detective. Why am I thinking?
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Well, he would say that to his good buddy Watson, Dr. Watson. But I'm saying elementary, my dear Watson, to Christian Watson, and it has a different meaning. It means you're playing like an elementary schooler. It basically means you're unsophisticated because the last 4 weeks, 3.3, 4.2, 4.8, 4.2, this guy was supposed to break out after that rookie season and have that big jump in year 2 like a lot of wideouts do, but he's not having it. So that's where I'm at there. Let's move on, though, to tight ends. Real quickly, GOAT vision. I mean, who's leading all tight ends in scoring right now? It's T.J. Hawkinson.
Yeah.
This guy, you thought maybe you were down on him after Kirk Cousins gets out and he's on the IR. Well, Josh Dobbs and him have a great rapport as well. His biggest game yet. And he was hurt with a rib injury, was limited in practice all week. He had, 11 catches, 134 yards, a TD, 25 points. He's the first tight end since 2009 to have double-digit catches in the first half. So
with a new quarterback.
I love him. And Hawkinson is going to be, I think, TE1 moving forward.
Yeah, could be. Which says something about who I'm not really necessarily high on him, but I'm figuring he'll have a good game, and that's Travis Kelce.
Gotcha.
Because I still don't know what happened the weekend of the World Series. I don't know. All of a sudden his quarterback is sick. He is lethargic. He barely gets the ball. Taylor Swift isn't there. The whole works. Then they have their bye week.
Yeah.
And I think he better have a good week. I think he will.
He'll rebound. I think we can drum it up to he lost his friendship bracelet.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened.
At least with us.
It was his kryptonite. Guys, we'll be right back after a short break. We got all the answers you need to know about injuries coming up. All right, we're getting the brain power going right now, Jason. We're joined now by Dr. Nithin Natwa at Fantasy Docs on Instagram and TikTok. Great to be with you, Dr. Natwa. So let's start here. Aaron Rodgers, he's making a lot of progress. What's your take on the return he could potentially have this season on the field?
He had this surgery called the speed bridge surgery, which allows players to return back quicker to conditioning in a controlled environment. The reason for that is because instead of stitching together the ruptured parts of that Achilles tendon, they actually drill holes into the base of the heel bone and they anchor the sutures there. So it puts all the stress of that ankle onto the bone instead of at that tear site. But I still think it's highly doubtful that he's going to be out there in December like he projects. I think by then, the Jets are going to be eliminated from playoff contention, and they'll use that as the reason why he's not coming back.
All right, interesting there. And then lastly, my dude, De'Von Achane. I mean, I need this guy to come back and run wild for me to make a run in a couple leagues. Tell me about De'Von Achane.
They said that he did not injure that meniscus, and they clarified that. And that was one of the major concerns I had for a variable return timeline. It basically tells us that he only injured that MCL, and the period of time that he's been out for, that 4-week timeline, is more than enough time for him to have fully recovered from that injury. So I'm fine putting him right back into my starting lineup as an RB1.
All right, great stuff as always. Dr. Nithin Natwa, check out at Fantasy Docs on TikTok and Instagram. Jason, now we got Sam Argier with GOATcast.
Meteorologist Sam Argier here with your Week 11 GOATcast, where we highlight the outdoor games weather-wise as you make your plans for your fantasy lineup. Mainly dry games for Sunday, at least during the game. The best chance of some showers comes for Denver Sunday night against Minnesota. And then we're looking ahead to Monday night, big game there, Kansas City and Philly. May see some rain around Kansas City Monday night. Here's what future track looks like in terms of what the rain and snow coverage looks like Sunday morning. We have some activity out there, but for the East Coast games and around the Midwest, looking pretty dry. It'll be cool up in Green Bay for their game against LA. Also Cleveland playing Pittsburgh, divisional matchup there at 46 degrees. A little windy in Pittsburgh, 10 to 20. And then pretty calm weather through Carolina and down into Florida for the games. In Florida, we'll be in the 70s. A couple outdoor afternoon games. San Francisco playing Tampa Bay in the 50s in the Bay Area. And then another game, cool in Buffalo with just a few scattered showers there. And then there is the radar on Denver for the Minnesota game. Perhaps some cold, wet rain, little rain-snow mix. And then that green means some rain for Kansas City against Philadelphia at 42 degrees at kickoff there. That's your Week 11 GOATcast.
Thank you, Sam. And coming up after a short break, it's time for GOAT lineup, Jason. Tough week for you.
Tough week. I had a bagel. I had a 0.
a big bagel.
Mm-hmm.
We got all the details on that bagel coming up. Well, what can I say, Jason? The tides might be turning. It's 4-6 now, 6-4 you. You put up a bagel, as you called it. I had one guy, Dak Prescott, scored 37.86 points, more than your entire team.
By a few points, yeah, for sure. Yeah, Gerald Everett got me 0. I got schmeared with that bagel, yes. It's time to move on. I felt that was a little bit of a softball I gave you.
You helped me out a little.
Yeah, but now I think we're back. We're back to pretty competitive lineup here.
Who do you got?
All right, so I'm going to go with Brock Purdy, James Conner, Tyreek Hill, and David Njoku.
Oh, when you bring out Tyreek Hill, you know you're using the big guns. I got Jared Goff, Travis Etienne, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Dalton Schultz. So
I think it's going to be close.
It's going to be a close week. We got to start seeing what's happening. I'm making that playoff push against you.
Yeah,
I don't want to eat these pancakes.
No.
A bagel and schmear, though. That does sound good. I might have that.
I may have that with Gerald Everett and invite him.
Sounds good. Guys, that's the Fantasy GOAT. We can't wait to see you next time. Hope your fantasy teams are doing well. We'll see you next time on the Fantasy GOAT.